Welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our free preview webinar for the Localization Institute's new Global Digital Policy Masterclass. And today we're thrilled to have Christina Podner with us. She's the instructor for the course. And I'd like to encourage you, if you have any questions during today's presentation, please save your questions for the end, or you can submit them through the chat at any time. I will take the questions and read them to Christina at the end, and she'll answer them for us. Wanted to say that we're very excited about this new masterclass. It's being brought to you by Localization Institute, and our registration is now open. I've put the website address for the course website in the chat feature there. It is localizationinstitute.com/GDPMC. And we'll send up a follow email after the webinar, and we'll include that link for you as well. The seats for the first session are currently open for registration. We're capping the total number of students in the session to 20, so you'll want to act soon to get a seat reserved while you still can. Our first session with Christina will begin on August 11th. I also wanted to briefly mention that Christina will be taking part in our Loc Worldwide 42 conference that takes place virtually next week. If you're interested in finding more about that conference, you can visit Loc World, and Christina has a session on Wednesday morning, July 29th. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. If you have any questions at all about the program or the webinar or Loc World, feel free to email me at alex@localizationinstitute.com. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Christina.
Thank you, Alex. And hi, everybody. I'm really appreciative that you're here. And what I really am is excited about this masterclass. I almost felt like we shouldn't call it a masterclass. We should almost call it a collaboration, because to me, what this class is really all about is ensuring that we teach and we enable you, and most of all, that we support you so that you can actually take off and do global digital policy on your own, with the benefit of everything that I've ever learned about digital policy globally and for local needs. So without hesitation, let me just hop in and talk to you a little bit about why this class. I've had several people reach out to me and say, global digital policy, do I need it? And so my answer to that is really the same thing that I say to everybody every time they're willing to hear about digital policy, which is a little story of my background. I actually started in the .com era in the late 1990s. And what's interesting is between that period of like 1990 to 1997, 98, we were kind of in this like really interesting period where we were doing all kinds of creative things, a lot of innovation, which is really great for the early days of the web. But what followed was a number of disasters. Anything from Google coming up with its search engine algorithms, to Facebook coming out, Gmail, Flickr, Vimeo. If you remember the Twitter scandals and faux pas of the 2000s, what was really interesting about this time frame is we all failed to create guardrails for ourselves around what was okay and what was not okay in the digital space. And what's interesting is that we've continued to behave a lot in those ways in the coming years, and many organizations still act that way today. They don't have sound guardrails that keep everybody working in the same space with the same understanding of how much space and how much freedom do you have until you go off of the cliff. And that's really what digital policies are. They are a way for all of us to be creative, to be innovative, and to have a lot of space to do things we do, whether that's in the creative space, in the content development space, in the localization space, or creation of content at a global level. And so digital policies came to be in the late 2015, 2018 timeframe. Before that, I felt like I was drumming a drum, if you will, of my very own. But I started to see policies taking more of a hold in 2015, 2016, 2017 timeframe, where really our recognition moved beyond the fact that we need a simple digital privacy policy on a page, to the fact that we need policies for the global operations, and we need them for everything from social media to how good of web content we need to produce, to how localization is performed, different of course than just translation. We need policies around branding. We need policies around information architecture and templates that we use for our mobile applications. We need policy for artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we certainly need policies for everything that's about to come at us from a digital marketing perspective. So with that in mind, I was really, really humbled when the Localization Institute said, let's do a masterclass together. And I thought, now I get to geek out with a whole bunch of other people, and we're going to have a lot of fun, I promise you. So we came up with this idea of let's create the masterclass. But the one thing that Ulrich, Alex, and I talked about early on was this cannot be just a whole bunch of academia. This needs to be an actionable, hands-on masterclass, which really got my juices flowing and got me very excited. So what we've done is we've actually taken this masterclass and put together 3 different modules. The first one is going to be around a program overview. What I mean by that is, what do you need from a global digital policy perspective to make policy work inside of your organization? And a lot of people say, well, that's easy. You write up policy and you put it up on your SharePoint or on your intranet and you're done. Well, I would argue that that's the most ineffective way of getting policy done. In fact, what we're looking to do is give you an idea and teach you how a program works in really mature, digitally mature organizations, which isn't just about creating a policy or writing it down. It's really about getting that policy out into the community of digital workers, getting everybody to understand the policy. Why is it? Why are we even doing it? How is it going to help me? What is it going to do for the business or for the organization on the whole? So the program aspect of digital policy is about teaching everybody what they should or shouldn't be doing, teaching them what those guardrails are. It's about enabling them, which is how do you actually do the change management to get policies implemented, installed into your organization. And it's ultimately about how you measure your policies to understand that they're effective. And again, they're just not things that are written down, but they are things that the organization follows and does in order to lend true integrity to your digital channels, whether you're in charge of a website, whether you're in charge of social media, whether you're in charge of any kind of mobile application, chatbots, or like I said, even more advanced channels like IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, or whatever's coming around the corner. So the first session is going to be a great overview, but make no mistake, in the very first class, we're going to start talking about how to get business done back when you go to the office. And that's going to set us up really nicely to perform a policies audit. As a consultant, the first thing I do when I go into a client organization is I ask, what policies do you have? And it's not, again, just about the written policies. It's about artifacts that might be coming up on your website. You might have an accessibility website policy that's published to your website, or you might have a privacy policy in your mobile application. And yet again, individuals inside of the organization might be using policies to do things like translate content from a global to a local perspective. Or there might be specific policies around what's appropriate or inappropriate in a specific culture. So you don't somehow accidentally offend individuals who you're really trying to convert from prospects to customers. So we're going to take a look at the worldview of what policies ought you to have and what do you have in place today. And I'm actually going to step you through that process so you can do that on your own inside of your organization and then come back and share your results. That, of course, will set us up nicely for the third module, which is policies development. Out of the slew of policies that you have, which we're going to find out through the audit, and make no mistake, every participant in this masterclass will have their own audit because your organization is unique. But once we figure out what that universe of policies are and where you have gaps, we're going to set off to actually write a policy. I'm going to teach you how to create a policy and how to document a policy that will stick. Remember, we're not just talking about shelfware, what I like to call. We're not creating documents that you put someplace on your intranet. We actually want this to be actionable and helpful. So all of the time that you're spending in the masterclass should not just help you in your job. It should bring you closer and create more of a collaborative way for you and your colleagues and your peers to work within that freedom, a framework that we talked about early on. Having the guardrails, understanding what they are, and yet everybody gets to do a lot of really cool stuff without going off the edges, without causing risk to the organization or doing something that'll position you negatively. So again, the goal is to do an overview. We do an introduction. You learn how the program should operate. You're going to learn everything you need to do an audit, and then you're going to learn how to write policy. What's really great is amongst all of these masterclass sessions, we're going to actually delve into a lot of details. I already talked about the fact of you're going to understand what the program looks like. But the program itself has certain roles and responsibilities, what I call a digital policy steward and a digital policy author. There can be many authors depending on your organization. So I'm going to share with you use cases around what my clients have found. What have I seen in over 20 years of my experience? What works, what doesn't work, based on the type of organization you find yourself inside of. If you're in a multinational, your world of policy is going to be very different than if you are a consultant who helps multinationals. If you're an association, or perhaps you're in a higher education organization, that's going to be very different than if you find yourself in a local, a national affiliate of a much larger company. And so we'll talk about those differences, and then we'll talk about really what does it take to get policies created and implemented regardless of where you're located in the enterprise, or if you're that consultant or outside advisor. We'll talk about things, again, how do you gather information, which is really about the audit and creating a baseline, if you will, for policies inside of the enterprise. We'll talk about how you document the policy. How do you measure and maintain policies so they don't get outdated the moment you've actually completed their socialization? We're going to talk about how you get approval so that these aren't just ideas that you have, but rather they're becoming part of an integrated enterprise. And then I'm going to talk about how people within your organization access policies. You're going to have more than one policy, more than one guardrail. But oftentimes I find that policies are dispersed throughout the organization and nobody understands where to go to find them. We're going to talk about best practices and how to create a repository that's easily accessible, that's searchable, that can be easily navigated, and it can actually be a resource to you and to your colleagues. And again, our big focus is going to be on the must-have digital policies for your organization. And I tell you, for some folks that are participating, that's going to be a small number. For others, it might be large numbers of policies. But make no mistake, we're going to cover everything for everybody. If you only have a few, but your organization is looking to grow, we'll set the journey for you. So after this class, you understand how you can mature. And if you already have well-established policies, we're going to talk about how you take that to the next level. And I'll share with you the gold standards that I've seen in the industry, which I consider most of the fun of this class, is the how-tos and the sharing of hands-on experience to make this real. One of the key things that I'm going to be talking about in the first session is obviously how do you actually get this global policy program implemented? And there's definitely different ways of getting this done. But one of the things that I've learned is sometimes you don't have 3 to 6 months when you go back to the office to make policy work. And so I'm going to talk about the agile approach, the 5-day approach to digital policy, and how you make that work in the global model. So as you're thinking about joining this masterclass, as you think to yourself, gosh, Christina, it's great, I want to do this, but I just can't take time away from my day job to do this and this alone for 6 months, don't worry, I've got you covered. We're going to learn how to do this when you don't have 6 months in play, and how to respond to certain things, like perhaps you get a threatening lawsuit letter around accessibility, or maybe your CEO decides to mandate a new technology be used, or somebody in marketing comes up with a great new product. This is how you get things done quickly, implemented in an agile way, and we'll talk about how that gets manifested over time into the enterprise. So a lot of helpful and practical tips coming out of this session. Then we're going to be talking about that favorite audit that I just mentioned. And I said that the number of policies you have is going to vary. This is just a quick snapshot of the policies you might have inside of your enterprise. And if you think that this is actually a lot already, be prepared to be wowed, because we're going to talk about more. We're going to talk about the ultimate universe, everything that you could ever need to reach that gold standard. But what we're going to do then is we're going to dial that back and make it appropriate to your situation. So what industry are you in? Where are you at in your maturity cycle? What are you currently focused on in terms of priorities? are all things that are going to enlighten this so that we can tailor the policy audit to exactly who you are in your enterprise and how your organization works with its realities. So don't worry about it. I'll step you through the process, but I want you to know that we're going to be talking about a lot of content. And then last but not least, what I really want you to do is to step away from this masterclass, understanding and having knowledge that I've developed over a period of time. I've seen really good things in digital policies, and I've seen the worst. And what I'm going to do in this masterclass is bring you the best of that. Last year, I published a book on how to minimize risk and maximize opportunities in your organization by creating digital policies. This masterclass is going to focus just on that. How do we create those global digital policies so that you can get the best out of the digital channels you're using and avoid missteps, social faux pas, or the things that we saw so much through the last 2 decades that negatively reflected on organizations. So with that in mind, I have to say that all of these sessions that we're going to be doing from a masterclass are complemented by open office hours. It's one thing to be in a class, as Alex mentioned, a maximum of 20 students, where you get a chance to be interactive, ask questions. It really needs to be a conversational experience for you. This is not going to be me preaching at you. You're going to be able to ask questions. We'll be able to interact. We'll actually look at your unique situation and circumstances and talk about where your organization is. But to complement that, we've also created a set of open office hours. I want you to be able to come in and say, hey, Christina, I have this really crazy question that's so unique to my organization, and I didn't think it was appropriate for class, but I want to talk to you about it. So I want you to have that experience of being able to interact with me one-on-one, ask those types of questions. If you need help with your audit, or you want a little bit of extra time figuring how to write a policy, this is a great way to do it. You can actually come to the office hours. I'll have open door policy, and we can discuss anything you want, anything that's proving to be a challenge, or anything that you want to do in terms of even stump the coach. You can ask me any kinds of questions. Nothing's off limits in terms of digital policy. This is your time and your time alone, in addition to the classes themselves. So I'm looking forward to, like I said, a lot of interaction, but I think more than anything, I'm really excited that we're going to be taking this journey together. So I hope that you're ready to roll up your sleeves. I hope that you're getting ready to get this work done. And I think out of everything, I'm really excited to meet you and look forward to seeing you on August 11th. With that in mind, I'm happy to take any questions that you have right now and start our journey together.
Thank you, Christina. That was a really great overview of the course, and so excited to see the first session in motion. The first question that we have for you today, our organization doesn't have the digital policy steward that you mentioned. How important is that role? Does it have to have a title like that?
Nope, not at all. In fact, I would tell you that 99.9 organizations that I work with don't have anybody by that title right now, and they probably won't in the near future. And so within this masterclass, we're going to be talking about who that is, what kind of skill sets they have or need to have. We're going to be talking about the roles and responsibilities that they ought to have. And I'll even share with you the kind of job description that comes with that type of a role. And it usually is integrated into somebody else's job function. So it's just a percentage of their time that's dedicated to that function. But I'll talk about how that gets done, and I'll give you some how-to tips. So if you are that person or somebody else is in that role within the organization, you understand exactly what their job description ought to be, and hopefully that'll help when the raise or the evaluation time comes around as well.
Great. The next question is from Lawrence, and she asks, hi, Christina, could we have a sneak peek of the user cases that you would present and share?
Yeah, so great question, and I love that. You can have a sneak peek. I do have to say that we are not going to be sharing names of clients, former clients of mine, because I don't do that. I do have several public cases that we're going to be talking about, cases that have been described and shared publicly. Intel is one, Coca-Cola is another. I'll talk about some other organizations out there that are publicly identified. And then I'll be sharing sort of what I call unbranded case studies from my own experience. And so I'm going to be talking about anywhere from a startup that I've worked with and how they've dealt with digital policies and how that's helped them what it helped them to accomplish. I'll talk about different organizations at different levels of maturity. Small companies, nonprofits, NGOs, how that changes in a multinational environment, et cetera. But we will have every session a lot of use cases, and we're going to be going into details around what works, what doesn't, and especially talking about how that differs when you're in a global or a multinational environment versus when you are centered and localized only to a single country, because I think that that's really critical to understand. A lot of differences and a lot of nuances.
Great. Next question is, how should organizations go about getting their digital policies in order when their resources and everybody overworked?
Oh, I specialize in that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this masterclass, which is why I'm going to be talking about sort of the ideal scenario for setting up a digital policy program in the enterprise. And then we're going to dial it back to what's realistic to meet you wherever you are. And like I said, I'm going to be talking also about agile methodologies to get this job done, because I recognize that you may not be able to take time out of your day job, and other people in the enterprise might not be able to quit kind of keeping the lights on, if you will, just to do digital policy. And so we'll talk about how to get that done with the least amount of time possible and what you can expect. And I'll talk about the examples that I've worked with clients on in terms of how to get that started really quickly and show value up front. So maybe you can actually get a little bit more bandwidth over time and a little bit more assistance from others in the organization to focus on policies. But make no mistake about it, it's a journey and it's a maturation process. And so my goal is to really teach you how to go from almost nothing, I'm taking on water on this ship, to how can you be that gold standard.
Great. This is a question more about the course itself and the open office hours. And they're wondering if they aren't able to come at the specific time that you have scheduled for the open office hours, will you be able to schedule a separate private one-on-one with you at some point?
We can work that out, absolutely. And the thing that I want to assure everybody is this masterclass is something that I want you to benefit from. And so if we can't figure out the office hours and if it's not working for folks, you can definitely figure out a way to have access to me. If you're in a different time zone, we'll figure it out. Or even if you just need to drop me an email, we can work that way too. But we'll work something out, because again, my measure of success is that every course is able to go back to work and feel like they're enabled to do global digital policy. And that doesn't happen unless you get the knowledge you need.
Great. Well, I don't see any more questions right now. If you have a question, feel free to submit it right now. I just want to take the time to thank Christina again for taking time to give us this great preview. We're really to see the course in motion. And if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to email myself, and I'll get the questions passed on to Christina so we can get an answer for you. Again, my email address is alex@localizationinstitute.com. Would like to kind of wrap up here and say thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time. We've recorded today's session and we'll be making it available on the course webpage. That's at localizationinstitute.com/GDPMC. And we hope to see you soon. Registration is open now, and the first session starts on August 11th. Christina, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, just roll up your sleeves, because we're going to be doing some hands-on exercises, and I'm excited about that.
Great. Well, on behalf of my boss and the founder of Localization Institute, Ulrich Hennis, thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Hey, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.